Cultural humility is particularly important in our work as leaders building inclusive workplaces and teams, as it shifts the focus from merely learning about different cultures to actively engaging with individuals in a way that respects and values their lived experiences. Unlike cultural competence, which focuses on acquiring knowledge about different cultures, cultural humility emphasizes recognizing and addressing power imbalances, acknowledging personal biases, and intentionally fostering respectful partnerships, particularly in cross-cultural interactions. Practicing cultural humility leads to deeper, more authentic connections in both professional and personal settings. Ultimately, acknowledging cultural differences and historical power imbalances strengthens our efforts to address inequities in society. It promotes a deeper sense of inclusion, leading to increased innovation and employee satisfaction. Culture is a complex construct that is created by a shared group of people. Take the example of the cultural iceberg. Above the water's surface are the numerous observable characteristics of a group that we see with our eyes. Examples of this within a larger context can include things such as food, greetings, norms, etc. The reality, however, is that these are merely an external manifestation of the deeper and broader components of culture, the complex ideas and deeply held preference and priorities known as attitudes and core values that lies deep below the waterline. These core values are primarily learned ideas of what is good, right, desirable, and acceptable, as well as what is bad, wrong, undesirable, and unacceptable. In many cases, different cultural groups share similar core values, such as honesty, or respect, or family, but these are often interpreted differently in different situations and incorporated in unique ways into our daily lives. Ultimately, our interpretations of our core values become visible to the casual observer in the form of observable behaviors, such as the words we use, the way we act, the laws we enact, and the ways we communicate with each other. So, like an iceberg, there are things that we can see and describe easily. But there are also many deeply rooted ideas that we can only understand by analyzing values, studying formative factors, and, in many cases, reflecting on our own core values. Specific to surgery, culture can have a big impact on lived experiences. Culture can vary drastically from department to department, institution to institution, and even geographically. It can be as small as how formally surgeons are expected to dress in different settings, and if scrubs are acceptable, to other larger differences, including clinical structure, collaboration, and communication. Sometimes, when these beliefs and norms are not necessarily the same, conflict, misunderstandings, and miscommunication can arise. Studies have shown that culture in surgery can have a large impact on the experiences of those within that environment. Because culture defines in-groups and out-groups, it can have significant influence on surgeons and surgical training and the treatment of patients if they are not aligned. In the study here, surgical trainees and faculty members were interviewed to assess their perception of surgical culture across key domains. Interestingly, the study concludes that differences in the perceived culture exist between generations of surgeons and trainees, and a better understanding of these differences should lead to improved communication and interactions between these groups, including structuring expectations for surgeons in their training and career. Enhancing diversity in the field, both in experience and expectation, may provide grounds for better understanding for both the more and less experienced surgeons and trainees. The following brief video highlights the importance of communication in creating culture.
Culture. It isn't limited to race and ethnicity, though we often think it is. It is the set of experiences, family traditions, individual heritage, and community membership that is unique to every person. And it's easy to think we know someone based on our assumptions about their culture. But each person is unique. And culture is not a fixed set of defined rules. If we treat it as such, our assumptions can lead us to create obstacles for others that we may not see.
One of my close friends at work identifies as gender non-binary and wants to be referred to with the pronouns they, them, or theirs. Coworkers, however, continue to use pronouns such as she or her. My friend is afraid to say anything about it for fear of being seen as a troublemaker.
Assuming that we know or understand someone based on our generalizations about their culture can be faulty and dangerous. It can lead us to misunderstanding, miscommunication, and mistakes. These assumptions can leave others feeling like outsiders and negatively impact workplace interactions, educational environments, and patient care.
I had a patient from India who was suffering from anemia. I was talking to her about the best way to get iron into her diet with the assumption that she was a vegetarian. After a few minutes, she asked me, couldn't I just eat more red meat? I could have asked a question about her diet instead of making an assumption about her culture, and the question would have helped me provide better care.
Many of the people with whom I've interacted have basically conflated the term race with ethnicity and sex with the term gender. It seems like everyone who isn't a member of a majority group is just lumped under the term minority.
One of my colleagues told me that he was surprised I'm lesbian because I dress like a woman. It's almost as if he would have been more comfortable with me being lesbian if I looked the way lesbians are supposed to look.
I'm of Hispanic origin and was told that the only reason I was hired here was because I speak Spanish, even though that's not a requirement of my job.
One of my supervisors made it clear that he thinks women should be more feminine, and that when they are confident and express their opinions openly, it's off-putting.
When I was trying to decide which graduate studies to pursue, an academic advisor pushed me toward a math specialty, in spite of the fact that I had no desire to pursue studies in math. He indicated that I might be good at numbers because I have an Asian last name.
Cultural sensitivity begins with the understanding that we can't stand in someone else's shoes, and that culture is as varied and multi-layered as each individual. But while we can't live someone else's story, we can approach others with humility and kindness, with the willingness to listen and understand. By checking our assumptions at the door and believing others when they talk about their experiences, we find the humanity that is our common thread.
At times, conflict negotiation is not only about managing interactions between team members, but also about assessing how you can approach negotiating for the changes that you feel are important or that you would like to see implemented. How can you create buy-in from key stakeholders and recognize how our different negotiation styles or strategies can inform the change you would like to see? As is depicted here, cultural competency and a global mindset are essential skills for working in diverse, interconnected environments. While they overlap, they each focus on different aspects of cross-cultural effectiveness. So why do they matter? We have already examined cultural competency a fair amount, which refers to the ability to understand, respect, and effectively interact with people from diverse cultural backgrounds. A global mindset, however, goes beyond cultural competency by integrating a broader perspective on global issues, economies, and interconnected societies by valuing diverse perspectives and fostering collaboration beyond one's own borders. For individuals and organizations, cultural competency and a global mindset help foster inclusive workplaces, improve cross-cultural communication, and drive innovation by integrating diverse viewpoints. They also enable more effective engagement in international markets and partnerships. This is an introduction to the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument, also known as TKI. The typical TKI lesson is learning to choose when to use each conflict mode, depending on the key characteristics of the conflict situation. For example, the amount of stress involved, the time available for resolution, the relative importance of the issue to each person, and the conflict's complexity. Rarely discussed are the two very different ways that each mode can, in practice, be used and which result in different outcomes. In fact, even if you select the right mode for a given situation, how you actually use that mode can lead to either good or less than ideal results. If you add in the cultural competency perspective and take into account how culture, motivations, and perhaps even gender play into negotiation, the approach and perspective can completely change. Ultimately, no single mode is best, and its effectiveness entirely depends upon the situation. As we wrap up this module, consider the role of cultural competency and global mindset in your attempts at conflict resolution and negotiations. When you reflect on past interactions, have you gained any insights on how culture differences and differing perspectives could have impacted those situations? What knowledge can you now leverage to have even greater success going forward?